Just trying to survive and learn to love along the way. By Foreplay on AO3. Episode 24, Chapter 24 of Hospitals and Worries. Even though they knew Izuku is fine, Hizashi is still worried. He can tell that Shouta is too from the way that he clenches his hands, equally as tight as his own grip. When they're finally led into the right room, they both pause in the doorway, surprised to find Ida and Todoroki in there as well. Aizawa-sensei, what are you guys doing here? Ida notices them first, but doesn't say anything of how their hands are still clenched together. At the sound of his friend's voice, Izuku turns from where he was gazing out the window and stares at them. Nobody moves for a moment, and then Izuku is letting out a small sob as he pushes himself out of bed. Hizashi is moving forward at the same time, dragging Shouta with him, and makes it in time to catch Izuku where he falls. It's like he forgot about his injuries the moment he saw them, and only remembered because of the pain that standing caused him. Hizashi holds him close as Izuku sobs into his chest, letting him have this moment to cry. We should get him back in bed. Shota's voice is quiet in his ears. Hizashi shifts his hold on Izuku, lifting and carrying him the short distance to the bed. Izuku still clutches the front of his shirt, refusing to let go. Can you sit with me? I can't. Izuku cuts himself off and shakes his head, clearly frustrated by his lack of words. Of course, little listener. Just let me take off my jacket and speaker. Sound good? Hizashi more feels and sees Izuku's nod against his chest before the kid is slowly letting him go, wincing at the pain that all of the movement caused. Hizashi sheds his gear before gesturing for Izuku to move over on the bed. The listener's eyes light up with glee as he moves over quickly, frowning down at his left leg when it doesn't move like he wanted it to. Do you think it will scar? Izuku asks the question, and Hizashi is settling beside him on the bed, and Shouta moves to stand by his side as he answers. Probably, although I've heard that the girls love scars, so with your collection you're in luck. Thank God Izuku understands that Shouta is joking. He squashes his face in disgust before signing again. Gross. Shouta laughs at that, and Izuku smiles, delighted that he managed it. Ida's clearing his throat from across the room, reminding them that they're not alone, and that Ida clearly has something to say. Hizashi lifts his arms as Izuku scoots himself a little closer to him. The kid smiles gratefully at him as he tucks himself into his side. Midoriya, I understand that you are concussed, but acting this way towards our senseis is highly inappropriate. I suggest... Shut up, Ida. It's Todoroki who interrupts him. And Hizashi is grateful. Izuku has been getting more tense with every word uttered. But Ida stops himself this time, drawn by the motion of Izuku raising his hand to sign. Except he doesn't sign. He raises his middle finger towards Ida with a sly grin. Sho! You've corrupted my son! Shouta doesn't answer him. Instead, he reaches across him and high-fives Izuku. Nice one, kiddo. Izuku beams at the small praise, and Shouta gives him a small smile before stepping away. The doctor chooses that moment to enter the room, and she doesn't even bat an eye at the sight of Hizashi on the bed with Izuku. I'm assuming you're his parents? Yes, ma'am. Ida audibly gawks at Hisashi's response, and he has to try very hard not to laugh. Alright, I've got a few things to go over about his condition and recovery. If everything keeps going smoothly, we should be able to release him in the morning. Hizashi and Sho nod, unwilling to interrupt the woman. The concussion isn't as bad as we initially thought. It, combined with the blood loss, gave him symptoms of severe head trauma. However, it was still fairly serious. He'll be overly sensitive to light and sounds for a little while. That's better than Hizashi hoped for. His responsiveness when they found him was worrying, to say the least. We'll have to be cautious with how he moves. With the amount of stitches we had to put on his abdomen, one wrong twist and they will pop open. I recommend he take things really slow for a week. That shouldn't be too bad. Tomorrow is the last day of internships, so there won't be classes. And after that, it's the weekend, so we'll just have to be careful at school after that. No hero studies for Izuku. By far the worst of his injuries is the damage to his left leg. While he miraculously didn't damage any nerves, he managed to scrape the bone. That all sounded awfully painful. Hizashi grimaced in sympathy, feeling awful for what his kid had to go through. There was a lot of soft tissue damage that we had to fix. It nearly had us bringing him into surgery. This will also take the longest to heal. I recommend you keep him off his feet as much as possible for the first week. I understand he still has to attend classes, and he should be good to move around slowly at school. However, if the pain does worsen, I'll stick him in a wheelchair. Normally I'll suggest just having him on crutches, but the damage to his adamant prevents the possibility. He'll most likely suffer from chronic pain because of how deep the wound went. Hizashi frowns. They already expected that from the damage to his arm, and now he has to go through it with his leg too? Poor Izuku. He holds him a little tighter at that thought. Thanks, Doc. Shouta answers for them, dismissing the doctor. Hizashi turns towards his husband as he scratches. I'm getting coffee. I'm gonna need it after tonight. Shouta turns with a slight frown and begins to walk towards the door. A frantic poking at his side makes him turn his attention from his husband. Can I get some hot chocolate? Shouta had just stepped outside the room. He poked his head back with a grumpy look on his face. What? Can you get the baby some hot chocolate? Shota's face softened at that, and he nodded, before disappearing out the door. Izuku frowns at the door for a few moments before tugging at his sleeve. Is Tired Dad okay? The listener sure is perspective. Anyone else wouldn't have noticed how distracted his husband is. Yeah, kiddo. He was just really worried about you. Probably still is, like me. He speaks quietly, trying not to disturb the others, but unwilling to let go of his son. Izuku raises an eyebrows, but signs nothing. When I got that text, and it was just a location, I didn't know what to think. And when you found you like that, it was terrifying. We can't lose you, Izuku. Hizashi will never forget the sight of Izuku bleeding out on the ground, or how pain-filled his screams sounded before they found him. He doubts Shouta will either. He focuses back on Izuku, and he pokes him in the side. The listener is still frowning. He's not mad. Why in the world would he be mad? Why wouldn't he be? I left you. He told me to stay with you, and then I left. And then I got hurt, and you had to save me again. I'm sorry, I keep messing up. You and Tired Dad should be mad. Izuku, if we were mad, we would tell you. We were scared because we didn't know what was going to happen to you. Not mad. Sho specifically gave you instructions for if we got separated, which I let happen. So if anything, this is my fault. Hizashi had been feeling this way ever since they found Izuku. If he had just gone with him, maybe he wouldn't have gotten so injured. What? I'm the one who asked to leave. You weren't to blame for any of this. If you're blaming yourself, I'm telling Tired Dad. The kid is going to be the death of him. How about we agree on this? It was none of our faults. And if you still think Sho is mad, you can ask him when he comes back. Izuku shakes his head at that suggestion. It looks like neither of them want to face Shouta. And people say Sho is the one who doesn't like emotions. Hizashi decides that they shouldn't end the conversation on such a negative note, so he brings up something that he knows will embarrass Izuku. Oh, when did Tired Cat become Tired Dad? He grins, trying to keep Izuku at ease. I've been thinking about it ever since you guys said that. Izuku cuts himself off, hands stilling before he finishes his thought. Said what, listener? He looks conflicted before he answers. That you love me. Izuku won't meet his eyes, opting to stare at the bed sheets instead. He looks uncertain, like he's worried they're going to take it back. Izuku, look at me. It takes a few moments before he does, and Hizashi finds a trace of fear in his eyes. We meant every word we say. We will say it as many times as we need to get it through that thick skull of yours. We love you, Izuku. Nothing is going to change that. Izuku nods a little, tearfully. And he's not sure if he got his point across or not. So, if Sho's become tired dad, does that mean I'm now loud dad? Izuku looks a little panicked at this. Only if you want. It's just, you guys are so nice and act like I think good dads would, but I'm not ready to say it out loud, so I change your sign names. I'll change them back if you don't like. Of course I'd like it, Izuku. I'm sure Sho will too. Izuku doesn't answer him, and they sit in comfortable silence, waiting for Shouta to return, and ignoring the looks from Todoroki and Ida. Alright, so it is a conscious effort. He consciously is like, alright, I'm gonna change the sign names, right? But he's not ready to say it out loud, which, yeah, some of you might be wondering, like, well, isn't this the same thing? No, it is not. Okay, so I've noticed this thing. It's easier for me to text something than it is for me to say something. And not in the sense of like, oh, obviously it's easier. No, I mean in the sense of if it's something hard, right? I can't verbally say it. Literally, I stunt myself. I can't verbally say it. But if I know the sign for it, I can say it, right? And it's not a sense of like, oh, at that moment I can't speak. I can speak. Or sometimes I can't speak, but we're not going to talk about those moments. But in the moments where, yes, I am still speaking, I just can't say that. I can't speak that out into the world. But I could text it. Or if I probably knew sign, I probably would be able to sign it, right? Because I've signed small little things here and there that sometimes I can't say that specifically. Like, sometimes I can't admit that I am uncomfortable and I need help. Not in the sense of, like, obviously, obviously in that sense, it's, like, hard to say that if, like, the person who's making you uncomfortable is right there. But in senses where there was no person where I was hiding my uncomfortableness and I just needed to say it out loud, it's harder to say out loud than it is to text it or say it in sign language. Why? Because saying it out loud makes it that much more real. And for Izuku, right, if he says that out loud, calls them dads, right, that is opening himself up. It's one thing to have them be his guardian. He could handle probably losing guardians. Obviously, he's not going to be able to handle it, right? Like, let's be honest. Even if he doesn't call them dads, he's not going to be able to handle losing them and them abandoning him, right? But in his mind, his irrational thoughts are, I'm not going to call them dad because I can't handle losing dads. I can handle losing guardians. When in reality, let's be honest, you can't handle losing either, Izuku. You're not going to handle. And even if you don't outright say it, hey, guardians or dads, in your mind, they're already categorized like that. They're already under that category. You're already looking at them in the sense of fatherly figures. You know, there's no going back. I'm sorry. You hit that gas pedal and all of a sudden the fucking, what's it called? The brakes disappeared. I'm sorry. And hopefully you don't crash, which I don't think it's gonna happen, but as I said, this story is progressing a bit, so I feel like the rest is gonna be kind of like a Fluffy going through this type of dynamic with obviously Izuku, Hizashi, and Shouta. This type of dynamic, but with the My Hero Academia main canon points, and obviously throwing in some Shindeku in there because I saw that tag. I saw that, well, not tag, but I saw that what's it called? That ship tag. Well, yeah, it's a tag. Never mind. What I was thinking of was additional tags. But I saw that ship tag. I see you. I see you. But as I was saying, obviously we have a bunch of factors, but notice how sometimes speaking it out loud, it's making that much more real. And a lot of the time, psychologically speaking, some people have a harder time speaking it out loud. For example, I have a harder time talking about a certain event that happened to me March 11th at 9 p.m. I'm joking. No, it was at 9 p.m., but it wasn't exactly 9 p.m., but it was around 9. Probably around 10 as well, like 9 going into 10. I don't know. I wasn't looking at the time when it happened, so. But I have a hard time saying it out loud. Like, I could speak about it. You know, I'm talking about it, but I can't outright say it. It's hard. Obviously, as the time progressed, I am now able to say it, but I can't fully say it because it's hard. It's hard. Let's just say it was an SA moment, right? And yes, I have now gotten to a point where I could say that, right? It was an SA moment, right? Sexual assault, right? But back then, a year, 2 years ago, I wasn't able to say it. 2 years ago, I was not able to say it at all. I wasn't able to admit it to myself, even in my head. And even as I admitted it to myself in my head, I noticed that it's easier to write it on paper. It's easier to talk about it through text. But having to say it out loud made it that much more real. And I remember the first time I said it, that I was a victim of SA. I cried that day, right? It was the moment it truly sunk in, right? Because sometimes verbally saying it just hits that much more. I'm obviously not saying that this is probably for everybody, but for some people that is how their brain functions. And you know, and I like to think that it probably functions for everybody. I mean, it functions like that for me. So yeah. Also, again, conscious thing, Ida now knows, so that's gonna be interesting. So the next chapter is called Of Meeting and Rest, and the summary is just hospital fluff. So we're gonna get some fluff. Also, chronic pain. Woo woo! As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.